Hi friends, it's Em here with a bit of housekeeping before we get into today's episode of Rage Against the Vagine. Firstly, I've written a whole book. I know, I'm as shocked as you are. It's called Blood, Sweat and Glitter, and it's a coming of middle-age story. But consider yourself warned, the whole thing was written from a neurodivergent, hormonal as fuck point of view. Because I have some stories to tell. It covers me quitting breakfast radio again, birthing a third child, selling out a national tour, having many existential lockdown crises, crafting, a lot of crafting, getting diagnosed with ADHD, autism and early menopause. Oh, it's all there. It's loud, it's funny, if I do say so myself, and it's available to pre-order right now. So if you wouldn't mind going to have a little look, you can just Google Blood, Sweat and Glitter. I won't send you to any show notes. Leave this in. My producers are laughing because I've just recorded next week's episode and there's so many show note references. Secondly, I'm back on stage. The Ballroom Sessions Encore is happening at the Forum Theatre on October 18th in Melbourne. It's one night only. It's me, my band, plus special guest Michael Painter, fresh off his run as Jesus in the Australian production of Jesus Christ Superstar, and Gemma Ricks, who needs no introduction, but I'll tell you, she's Australia's longest-serving AFAB. So you're looking at Gethsemane and Defying Gravity all on the same night. Why wouldn't you get your tickets immediately? They are going quickly. Check it out. And finally, if you need something a little lighter after Rage Against the Vagine peers directly into your soul, I have another podcast called Emsolation. That's me and my best mate since I was 11, screenwriter Michael Lucas, aka the guy who killed Patrick on Offspring, talking about personal life chaos, pop culture, and occasionally politics. I have done an extreme deep dive into Sabrina Carpenter's new album, Man's Best Friend.
Wow.
And we're going to be doing a dramatic reading of her lyrical masterpiece, Not Since Lennon McCartney.
I was going to say not since Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion.
Of her second single off the album, Tears. We've also been looking at the spectacular film clip. Then we're going to be talking about, you might have noticed the T-shirt I'm wearing.
Lines are drawn.
It says Team Conrad. Marcella, my eldest daughter, she's got a lot on. She sat hand-making T-shirts for us all. I said to her, don't bother. I am Team RD. IDGAF.
Oh, okay, all right. Is anyone actually team the other guy? Because I'm not sensing that.
Yes.
Oh, there are.
And it's disturbingly a high proportion of
Team the brother.
insulators.
Really?
Team Jeremiah.
No.
These women are sadists. These women like a bad boy. But it did make us think about the last kind of love triangle we cared about, and we'll let you know what that is. But think about the 90s and the biggest love triangle you can possibly have been involved in, and we'll be discussing that also. And then in the sealed section, I obviously have returned from Noosa with Michael, and we watched Severance, 2 seasons in 1 week. Probably not medically advisable.
Probably not. Oh, you were wanting to go faster.
Truly.
Yeah,
I did get you to
were
do 3.
frustrated. We did. We had one night of 3 episodes.
Well, since then, I've had a lot of thoughts, a lot of questions.
Done the podcast.
The headline is, I'm pretty sure one of the main characters is actually a goat.
You have the manic look of someone who's been a long way down Reddit.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry, I figured it all out. I've solved Severance, and you'll be able to hear that in the sealed section.
Yes. Great.
Also,
Has someone told Ben Stiller that you've solved it? We should get him. I hope he'll be listening.
I've solved it. I've clocked it.
Yeah.
It's fine. They can come to me when they want to finish writing the seasons. I'll tell them how it's got to go. I'll tell them what actually has happened already.
Okay. Well, I've got questions. I'm sure you'll be able to answer them.
If not, I'll make it up. I love Vinci. And then finally, the Noosa Accords were written. That is me changing my life because of events that took place in Noosa.
Yeah.
I've already broken them 2 days back.
Yeah, you have. I had one and I've broken it this morning.
Hi, I'm Em Rusciano. I'm a writer, singer, and stand-up comedian. And perimenopause is kicking my ass. So I decided to do something about it. This is Rage Against the Vagine. Content warning. This episode of Rage Against the Vagine touches on themes of mental health and suicide. If it brings anything up for you, know you're not alone. Support is always available. You can reach out to Lifeline on 131114 anytime. This episode of Rage Against the Vagine asks the big one. Why the don't I feel like myself anymore? We dive into the brain rewiring, the rage, and the relationship strain, with insight from some brilliant menopause-informed doctors and psychs. If showing up like you used to suddenly feels impossible, strap in.
You know, when that good woman persona starts to crack, you start to see authenticity, you start to see actually what's important to you.
It's often being referred to as the hormone of accommodation and servitude. Shall we now vomit?
Wow.
We're seeing separations initiated by women. I think up to 70% are being initiated by women.
Perimenopause just stretches you that little bit further and the ability to mask just goes.
We're getting a leaner and meaner brain that will set us up for our next chapter of life.
Before we get into it, a quick note. This podcast isn't medical advice. It's about sharing stories and expert perspectives to help you feel seen. Science is still catching up to lived experience, and not every doctor is trained in menopause care. If something here resonates, take it to a healthcare professional who understands this stage, because your story deserves to be heard and validated. Rage Against the Vagine is proudly brought to you by What If. It's Aussie for travel. Rage Against the Vagine was recorded and edited on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. We honour the cultural strength, sovereignty and resilience of all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and acknowledge their continuing connection to land, sea and community.
The hardest thing I find is facing every day, to be honest. I get internal rage, sadness. It's just so consuming.
Brutal, awful, painful rewiring of my brain. I have lost family, friendships, myself, my brain, my mind, my soul, my job, my career, and every single ounce of who I formerly was known as.
Menopause has just stripped me bare. It's completely rewiring my brain. And I still don't know who the fuck I am, what I am, where I'm going, and I'm scared, lost. I'm a shadow of my former self. I don't know where she went, and I don't know how to find myself again.
When I first heard those grabs from the Rage Committee, I just sat there like, yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. The sadness, the rage, the complete unravelling. I felt seen because I've been there. Well, I am there. I've said it before in this series, but for me, it felt like the role I'd been cast in suddenly didn't fit anymore. And I didn't know how to keep showing up for it. And I know I'm not the only one feeling like this. So once again, a massive thank you to our committee. Thank you for being so bloody honest and generous. This shit isn't easy to say out loud, but it's important, really important. Because when we don't talk about what's happening to us, we don't just suffer in silence, we start to believe we're the only ones falling apart. And that can take us to some pretty dark places. We've talked a lot in this series about our bodies, the silence, the systems that fail us. But in this episode, we move to the brain. Not just the rage, but the rewiring. Tackling the big question, why the don't I feel like me anymore? Now, maybe grab some tissues because I'm not gonna lie, I needed them during these expert chats. Poor Zeke, my sound engineer, he had to work his audio magic to tone down the full snot situation that was happening. I sat down with two incredible psychologists, Leanne Mulheron and Kirsten Baus. You'll hear a lot from them this episode, along with a few other experts and guest voices. Together, we dive into some pretty heavy stuff. Identity loss, mental load, and that exhausting good girl trap. Relationship breakdowns, and how our nervous systems are just completely cooked. Let's start with Leanne Mulheron, founder of Affinity Psychology in Sydney. Leanne's website describes her as a passionate advocate for women's mental health with a focus on menopause, PMDD, ADHD and autism. Suffice to say, Leanne is absolutely my kind of psych. And when I sat down to record this, I was emotionally and mentally at breaking point. So here we go. Jumping straight into my first hard-hitting question, asked through tears of exhaustion, confusion and fear.
What's happening in our brains? Because for me, it's been like this total unravelling, but it's the duality of an unravelling, but also this strange undercurrent of strength and clarity that I don't want to fucking keep showing up as everyone's doormat anymore. Oh my God. And I think that really puts people out. And when you're like, I've been a people pleaser my whole life, which may shock some people. Yes, I've been holding back. But I think especially when you want your family to like you, coming up against that realisation that you don't want to be the family maid, curator, cook, chauffeur, it really fucks your life up. So what's happening? Why all of a sudden do we not want to show up as we have been for, 20 odd years?
I think there's a key part to that. First of all is the unravelling, as you kind of talked about. There's an unravelling of where we question our core beliefs, relationship patterns, feeling disconnected from our previous sense of self, and then maybe some grief for who that woman was and what she was able to do. And then there's like the metamorphosis where, you're having confusion about what your authentic needs and wants are, and previous coping mechanisms don't work anymore. You can't keep all the balls in the air anymore. And then finally, there's the becoming, where you're starting to get more in touch with these authentic needs. You start to put boundaries in place that never existed before. Sometimes rage can be, sacred. It can give you lots of information. Often we don't show it in healthy ways, but it's telling us something. So it's getting in touch with that and what that means. And obviously the people that have benefited from you not having any boundaries aren't going to be happy to see this new version of you. So that can create a lot of conflict as well.
Coupled with ADHD, the lack of boundaries and, my complete inability to, I guess, I can no longer mask. Masking used to be a choice for me. I used to be able to just switch gear.
Yeah.
That's been a huge thing that I think maybe ultimately will be good, but it's causing a lot of stress for me within interpersonal relationships. Is this common for women my age, not just neurodivergent women, but the stress that it does all of a sudden, your life feels like, my life feels like I'm deliberately fucking it. But I need to, but I don't like what's happening, but it needs to happen.
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah. Women feel like they're imploding their lives, by finally maybe getting in touch with their authenticity. So it happens across the board that women can't mask anymore. They can't keep, they have less resilience to stress. They are starting to question their identity. They're starting to question their roles in the family and how unfair that is. They're starting to question the emotional load that they've been carrying for decades. Let's just start questioning everything because they don't have the capacity to mask and hold it all together anymore. So when that starts slipping, everything starts being questioned. And I think for neurodiverse individuals as well, it's particularly confronting because a lot of neurodiverse people are constantly looking for the rules about how to do things because things may not come intuitively. Rules are like their lifeline. And the menopausal transition can be so discombobulating. There's no rules. Even people that aren't neurodiverse don't know what's going on. So you're kind of gaslighting yourself. You've got no idea. You've got no stable ground. So it's such an upheaval for a lot of women.
My chat with Leanne was honestly so validating. You'll hear a lot more from her this episode, and you really all should check out the tools on the Affinity Psychology website. Links in the show bio. Also, can we talk about the word discombobulating because we don't use it enough? It means to confuse, to unsettle, and to make something feel uncomfortable or off kilter. And honestly, that's exactly how perimenopause has felt for me. And for so many of you who've written in or sent us voice memos. Like, you're just not yourself anymore. Like your internal compass is spinning. You're forgetful, foggy, flat, ragey, emotional. But guess the what? There are actual neurological and hormonal reasons for all of this. So before we dive back into the feelings side of the chat, I wanted to bring in a bit more science. You've met her before in this series. Associate Professor Caroline Gurvich, neuropsychologist, researcher, and Deputy Director of the Her Centre at Monash University, where she also leads the Cognition and Hormones Group. Caroline's here to walk us through how our hormones mess with our brains and why we can stop feeling like ourselves when those levels start to shift.
So I think I think a lot of people think of estrogen and progesterone as being our reproductive hormones, and they regulate our reproductive function, which they do. But they also travel through our body, they enter our brain, and they're quite potent in the way that estrogen and progesterone can impact our brain. And we've got what's called receptors in our brain, so bits of our brain that respond to changes in these chemicals. And the studies that have looked at where they're located, they're really densely located in the front part of our brain, which is important for our executive function. And in another part of our brain, the temporal lobe, which is where our memories sit, and also our amygdala, and our limbic system, which is where our emotions are regulated. So these parts of our brain, executive function, emotion, memory, have lots of estrogen receptors. So when our estrogen goes up and down, these bits of our brain can respond to that. And sometimes they don't like that on and off feeling. And estrogen also protects our brain. It's what we call neuroprotective. So while it fluctuates during perimenopause, it's also gradually declining. And so we're losing some of this benefit, neuroprotective benefit of estrogen as well. So there's a couple of reasons scientifically why estrogen might have an impact on all of the thinking skills, and it kind of validates what so many women experience and talk about. Their executive functions, their memory, their emotion regulation is fluctuating and on off, and they don't know what's going on, and sometimes they're clear in their thinking and sometimes it's foggy. And so it's very likely that is reflecting whether your estrogen receptors are being hit or not hit, and fueled or not fueled.
That bit really stuck with me, that we actually lose some of estrogen's brain protecting powers. It explains so much of what we feel. The brain fog, the mood swings, the moments where we just don't feel like ourselves. Now, meet another incredible woman whose own experience with perimenopause stretched her, even as a clinical psychologist. Frustrated by the lack of support, she decided to build the thing she couldn't find. A space where women could get real, informed help from people who actually understand. Here's Kirsten Baus and the story behind All About Her Centre for Menopause that started with, well, a tale as old as time. A woman in her early 40s, ill-equipped to read the signs, but like so many of us, her body was screaming for help.
Oh, look, the mood, the sleep, the, irritability, I just was so much, short of fuse, dry vagina, that one as well. Yeah. And I saw my GP and specialists for years about all these things because I was 42, 43, and nobody mentioned perimenopause, not at all. And it was actually when I was round about 45 that I was whinging to my kids. And I was saying, I'm sick of whinging about my sleep and all this stuff going on. I sound just like Nan when she was my age. And I was like, oh, light bulb moment. And so then I just did this massive deep dive. I'm an ADHDer too, so
I guessed, yeah,
very hyper-focused. And obsessed, and still am. And it was like, this is not okay. It is not okay that I didn't know about this stuff, that it's been going on for years. I've been struggling for years and trying to find the right information and support and intervention, whatever that might have looked like. And, then I went to look for therapy because I was in this whole, I had a private practice up for 18 years, group private practice. And I'm like, I don't want it anymore. Who is this person that doesn't want this? My marriage had also ended, there were so many factors that also really I guess, skewed the perspective of what might have, everything could be, oh, you've had a marriage breakdown. Of course you feel these things, right? You know, you're starting to date again. Of course these things are happening, or just all of the things, you know. And for me, I could not find a psych who had any idea about this. You know, in terms of really in an obvious way. I mean, I'm sure many did who were older than me at the time. They'd gone through it, but it wasn't accessible. I couldn't find it online. You Google looking for a psych, you ask your colleagues, all that kind of thing. I couldn't find it. And I just thought, I am being brought to my knees by this experience. And I can't find support in my own discipline, which I truly value. This is not okay. And I thought, I'm a really persistent person. And I thought, if I can't find this easily, then how is the woman who's really struggling, not as persistent, doesn't even know what the fuck's going on, how's she going to? So All About Her really came from, I've got to solve this particular problem. If all I can do is make it easier for people with ovaries to find support, you know, psych support, sitting in front of psychs who know this shit, who actually also actively want to change the narrative, educate, have this same impact as me, then I'm doing a good thing. So that's where that came from.
Good for her. All About Her is now a space where women can connect with menopause-informed psychs. Definitely check it out, but not just yet, because Kirsten's about to unpack why so many of us, maybe not all, but a lot of us, especially neurodivergent women and AFAB people in our midlife, are feeling completely misaligned and out of whack in our brains with estrogen on the decline.
Because it is neuroprotective, it also creates, from a mental health perspective, this real vulnerability. It's when our brain is, I kind of think of it as a renovation that takes a really, really, really long time and is very chaotic. There's no project manager, right? The tradies are just coming in willy-nilly and things are being done in the wrong order. And that's where, I mean, think about that. If you were living in that environment, in that kind of scenario, it would be extremenously stressful. Well, that is what is happening in our brain. And it takes some time, and this magical one day of menopause, and then you kind of menopausal for the rest of your life. I mean, even that I think is really important. I've done the rounds of all the events that were happening in the menopause space around Australia. And Louise Newson saw in Sydney. She also came here to Perth. And I really, the extra piece of new information that she provided, well, she gave loads of information, but it was new for me, was that this kind of process. So perimenopause, we know, people can blink and they don't even notice it. But generally it's kind of 3 to maybe even 12 years. But what is often thought, and I hear this from clients, is when I'm menopausal, everything will be okay. No, it takes another 7 years, she kind of said, on average, to actually really get that stability within ourselves. And that includes that stability in our brain functioning. And once our hormones are stable, even though if they're very, very low and, not the same, our brain can do what it is marvelous at. And that's that neuroplasticity. So our brain can start to kind of compensate in some areas and actually become an even better functioning brain than it was, before. So there actually is this 2-decade experience of change. And that's mind-blowing. Like, wrap your head around that.
I love the idea of a better brain, but a 2-decade renovation with no project manager? Cough? Honestly, I don't know who from my friends, family or workplace is going to survive if I'm like this for decades, especially when I am barely holding it together enough to show up in the way I used to. So I asked Kirsten, why does it feel like when estrogen leaves, so do all the f***s I used to give?
It's often been referred to as the hormone of accommodation and servitude. Shall we now vomit?
Wow.
And so, come on, it's no surprise when that hormone starts to decline, the hormone of accommodation and servitude, that we become less accommodating and less wanting to serve others. I often say that those kind of, fertile years, we spend all our time, whether we have children or not, but we spend our time helping others actualize their potential. Mm-hmm. And when we go through this stage of life, we actually think, fuck, it's my turn. I want to actualize my potential, big or small. I mean, it's everyone's individual choice, what's important to them, and has meaning and brings joy and curiosity and all the things. But yeah, it's our time. It's our time. And our hormones support us to do that. Like this transition, to be discerning, to be saying, my turn now. I'm not sure how we'd go if we were still having buckets of estrogen. I don't know.
And when you realise if society hadn't conditioned us, our kids, our partners, to believe that women are a certain way forever, and then all of a sudden we reach midlife and we're like, no, we're not. We shift, we change. I feel like a lot of the things associated with perimenopause, like if I was all of a sudden going through perimenopause and then my entire family knew this was coming and pivoted, so someone else took over the dinners, someone else took over the minutiae of running a family, I was allowed to get up each day and exercise and eat what I need to eat and then get myself to work rather than having to, coordinate all this stuff. I wonder if the rage, anxiety, the things that do happen to us, I wonder if they would be such a problem and so debilitating if we treated this phase of a woman's life as it deserves to be treated. How much of it is societal and how much of it is biological in terms of how brutal perimenopause is my question.
Well, we actually know that there's research where communities where ageing is really revered and the wise older woman gets to move out of the practicalities of and the hard yakka of running families and lives and however that works in these communities, and really are able to sit in their capacity, which is reduced from a physical kind of level, but be the wise guide, the sage. And, those communities, the women report far less symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. This is absolutely tied to a perspective and attitude and narrative around what women are valued for in our communities, in our society. Youth, fertility, beauty. Once those are gone, we're pretty screwed.
And it's also happening to the traditional caregivers and caretakers, and there's nobody to look after us because we are so many other people's executive functioning. Like we're not just trying to get it going for ourselves. We are doing that for other people. And at this stage of life, we just really struggle with it for all the reasons. But it's still expected of us. And what's really interesting to me is that we recognize, I'm not sure if you've heard that perimenopause has often been referred to as reverse puberty by the medical community. So hormones going up in puberty but crazy, hormones coming down but crazy in perimenopause. Well, there's also a little bit of research, but more, I think, relevant, heaps of anecdotal comments and stories that you can hear where women talk about the psychological stuff they wrestle with during this period of time. Identity, their sexual selves, a drive for autonomy, their values, their ideology, all of these things. Now, they're the developmental tasks of adolescence. They are the psychological developmental tasks that adolescents wrestle with. And we know it's tricky. We know teenagedom is not an easy time of life. We support as best, we accept that. We support to make it as easy as possible, to make it as enriching as possible, to help our young people find that steady place of this is who I am and this is what I believe and this is what's important to me and I'm comfortable in my body and la da 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 da. We do all of that. Well, the same thing is happening in perimenopause.
But without the support, without the understanding of what's going on, without the understanding of why it's important that we actually wrestle with these things, like there's just no conversation around the importance of this from a psychological, developmental, lay the foundation for the next stage of life kind of stage.
I've heard the term reverse puberty used to describe menopause before, but when Kirsten put it in that context, it was one of those big penny drop moments for me in this podcast. Because when you really think about it, teenagers do get time, space, and grace to figure themselves out. But for women and AFAB people in midlife, we're redefining those same foundations while still being expected to hold everyone else up. Be dependable, be nice, be agreeable, be across the calendar, be fine. I would love to lock myself in my bedroom and listen to Alanis Morissette for 6 hours in a row and eating nothing but chocolate. But no, I've got to show up for life. And that's where Dr. Fatima Khan comes in. With her trademark motto,
hormone health is mental health for women.
She's been banging this drum across the whole series.
I think there's two things. If you look at it when you start at puberty in your early 20s, you're by yourself. It's all about self-care. It's me, we're focusing ourselves, we exercise, we eat well, we've got all the time. And then we have the first kid, and then you have the second kid, and you hit 40 when they're annoying teenagers. Let's say to what they really are. When my patients come in, I'm like, well, let's just agree on one point. Teenagers are frustrating.
Sometimes the husbands are acting like teenagers too.
Well, when you're going to perimenopause and kids become teenagers, they become the fourth kid.
Yeah.
They're in line with the teenagers, I say. So now you're not only dealing with your hormone fluctuations, you've got teenage hormones, and then you've got the husband who suddenly feels more needy.
What's going on too?
Well, they feel more needy because then they had this wife or partner who was, first of all, looking after the husband, making sure they're fed and food is done and the kids are all looked after, and now suddenly the kids don't want to listen to anything and you're going through your fluctuation. So I think it's just going back to the point that everything coincides and our cup is empty. It's like anything else. I say if you have the most amazing car like a Ferrari, it's got an engine. If I drove it every day, 100 miles an hour for 30 years, I mean, after 30 years, it's going to break down.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the same thing with us. We've got this cup, we're pouring, we're giving, we're giving,
Ferrari's
we're
missing
giving.
several wheels. The engine doesn't work.
The tires
the
are
seats have been ripped out. All the windscreens are smashed. I'm still a Ferrari.
Yeah.
But she's not pretty.
And it's in a scientific way. It's your ovaries are aging, okay? We call it an ovarian aging. The hormones are going down. The fuel for your body is going down. And what it's saying is, I need you to look after me. I need you to maintain me by looking at your food. Are you eating enough protein and fiber, or you're just one of those rushing mums, 3 lunch boxes like majority of my women do? Have a coffee, no food at breakfast, no food at lunch,
I feel
eating
attacked right
leftover.
now. I feel personally
But
attacked.
what I mean is, this is the modern woman's life, and you can see at a time when your body is asking for help. That's where the rage comes from. So whenever the body is communicating a symptom, it's highly intelligent. It's trying to ask you for help because it can't communicate any other way.
I love that.
It doesn't have words. So it presents.
So when the body, say that again,
when a symptom is showing up,
Yeah.
it's body communicating a need.
Got it. And you know what goes against everything we've been raised to believe? Honouring that need is not selfish.
Well, we're conditioned not to follow our intuition because we were seeking for external validation the minute we're born as a woman. Do I look pretty enough? How do I look in the mirror? Is my hair nice? Am I slim enough? Am I getting the right grades? Okay. Am I being appreciated? And then am I a good mother? Am I a good wife? There's all these roles we're filling that we forget ourselves along the way, who we really are. And then comes perimenopause and you're like this cup or the Ferrari or whatever you want to use. It's like, you need to stop and you need to fuel me. I can guarantee you every woman in her 40s is struggling. But we're trying to keep everyone happy as we're conditioned to do, like good wives and good women and good mothers, to keep it together until that rage builds up and it bursts out. That's what rage is. When we're not honoring our intuition, our value, and what our body needs. Because our body has to shout because you're not listening. If you haven't been listening, Em, what else is it going to do?
It's a really scary and sobering question. And content warning, it's only going to get more sobering from here. Because this whole reverse puberty thing, without the right supports, can be really dangerous. Dr. Hannah Chapman, another powerhouse GP who lives and breathes women's health, is across just how much these hormonal shifts affect our brains. This isn't just mood swings, it's neurochemistry. And the risk? It's very, very real.
We can't access our feel-good hormones without, good levels of estrogen and estradiol. So to have serotonin, to have dopamine, to feel good, we need hormonal stability. That's how we are actually wired. And I'm very mindful of how profound the mental health effects can be for women during this transition. And we know that even women who've previously been psychologically well their entire life have a 30% chance of getting anxiety or depression. Those who have been depressed have about a 60% chance. And the peak of female suicide is 45 to 49. So it's actually quite a serious concern, really.
I've shared that stat before, and I'll keep sharing it until it gets the prominence it deserves. In the next episode, we'll talk about how to actually navigate the medical system to get the help you need. But I can't say this enough. If you're in the thick of it, stop at nothing to find a menopause-informed, high care factor doctor and a support team that sees you. Dr. Yvonne McCartney, GP and co-founder of Menopause Health Geelong and Regional Victoria, sees the dismissal and gaslighting all the time. That stat again, Dr. Yvonne?
44 to 55-year-old women is the highest suicide bracket in women, irregardless of a past history of mental health. Like, to just dismiss that as it's natural. It's a natural process. Maybe it's a bit of anxiety. It's not a bit of anxiety. It's completely destabilising people's world to the point where they think the world's better off without them.
If this is hitting close to the bone, like it did for me, please know you're not alone and you don't have to figure it out by yourself. I was struggling in silence, thinking I was failing something every other woman just got on with. If you're struggling or even just starting to wonder if you might be, please find a way to speak up. Share the load. You can contact Lifeline, Beyond Blue, 13Yarn, a menopause-informed GP or psych, or someone you trust in your own circle. We'll include all the links you need in the show notes. The fact that this statistic even exists is completely unacceptable. Combine it with the fact we're told so often to just get over it, that it's just part of being a woman or just a part of aging, is just so fucking wrong. And I truly hope these conversations help shift that. Please take the toll of this stage of life and the signals from your brain and body seriously. You deserve support, and you don't have to push through it on your own. Now, it has been a while since I've served up one of the iconic rock montages, and I was planning to save all the hope for the end, but right now feels like a good time to remind you that good things can come out of this. From the broken Ferrari or the unsupervised renovation in your brain, we've heard again and again that something stronger, clearer, wiser, and more authentically you can come through the other side. So, a quick regroup, a palate cleanser, if you will, because before we dive into the messy relationship stuff and the whole why can't I show up in the way I used to spiral, I want to impress upon you that there is hope. I will call the following supercut, It's Not All Bad, straight from the experts and special guests who've lived it and treated on the front lines every day.
I'm enjoying this new version of me because it's fun in here. Like, it's good because we don't have to play along all the time because playing along is exhausting. And maybe this is the time, it's the portal whereby you're allowed some grace. It's 52 years of being nice and appeasing people.
I think you sort of have to go through the trenches before, as I say, you get that re-emergence. Like, our brains are undergoing a pruning process to get us there, but during that time, it's just really disruptive. We're getting a leaner and meaner brain that will set us up for our next chapter of life. It happens in adolescence, it happens postpartum, and it's happening now. And we will be better for it. We just need to support women around it.
Don't internalise this. This is biology. You are not broken.
All metamorphosis is messy. It's allowed to be. That is nature.
Their body is changing, their hormones are changing. Nothing is their fault. It's an opportunity to really build our brain health for healthy aging and to take this time of our life and embrace it and take control and have some hope for whatever your future is.
They should know that they don't need to be going through this alone. There is help.
This is a time for authentic, at least authentic renewal, this forging by fire almost. So we get through to the other end and we're like a phoenix rising from the ashes. We see, more women with more energy. We see more businesses opened by women over 50. We're seeing more authentic relationships, friendships, a truer sense of who we are.
Well, I hope you're feeling a bit better after that compilation, my darling, exhausted yet magnificent phoenixes. Lots of sage advice in there, with some reoccurring themes: hope, growth, pruning, wisdom, and silver linings still to be realised. Plus, a consistent call out to get the help you need and not white knuckle it like the boomers did. That last voice you heard was clinical psychologist Leanne Mulheron, and she's about to bring us back to this episode's focus question: why the don't I feel like me anymore? She also dives into how these shifts are messing with our relationships, because as we've heard in this episode, when estrogen drops, so does our urge to nurture and accommodate.
So estrogen is like this massive conductor that's running the orchestra of your whole hormonal system. And that affects oxytocin, which is like the bonding, nurturing hormone. That's kind of what floods your brain when you have a baby. But that starts going down. So you're not accommodating anymore. You're not compromising anymore.
Oh, so that's a thing.
That's the thing.
I don't want to nurture anything.
No.
I truly see myself in situations where I would have thrown my body on the grenade, and now I'm like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I feel cold towards it. So that's actually, that's normal.
That is a thing. That is the biological thing that's going on. So again, when relationships are used to you compromising and used to you behaving in a certain way and maybe pivoting a little bit to, compromise for what they want, when that happens, you're butting up against that kind of resistance. You've also got the other things that happen during peri, communication, your memory, all these other challenges that are going on, and your partners and the rest of your family just don't know what's going on either. So there's a lot of confusion. And then you throw in the identity crisis of who am I? So who are we? How do I fit in this tribe? And do I even want to be in it anymore? So there's so much uncertainty.
Oof, that line about not knowing how you fit in really got me. I mean, I love my family more than life itself and would take a bullet for most of them. But do I still play the same role? No, I don't, nor do I want to.
Women are like the emotional shock absorbers for their family. We take the hit, we absorb the shit. We try and absorb it so that they don't feel distressed. So their distress is less.
Yeah.
And that's exhausting. And it's also doing them a disservice to some degree, because we need for them to be resilient. Our goal shouldn't really be to have happy kids. It should be to have resilient kids. Western culture is very averse to distress. Whenever anything distressing comes up, we kind of try and move it along.
Yes.
We can't sit in it and process it and manage, and then find out strategies so we can manage it. So we can stay in that window of tolerance where we don't get dysregulated. We just push it down, particularly women, we push it down and we take everyone else's emotional temperature and we don't look at our own. So I think it's really important to be able to sit in distress sometimes, sit with our kids in distress, if we've lost it in front of them. Coming back.
Yes.
But coming back and repairing, talking about it, explaining what's going on, educating everyone in the family about what's going on, so they're not internalizing and thinking it's something that they've done.
After hearing all that, you might be thinking about someone you've recently rage spiraled at, or someone you love dearly but just haven't been able to show up for the way you used to. Not because you're selfish, cruel, or lazy, or checked out, but because you're beyond exhausted and your brain is literally rewiring itself in real time. And some days, it genuinely feels like someone else is at the wheel. A little getaway, just you and that person, could help. Neutral ground, somewhere picturesque, away from the noise and the never-ending list of things to do around the house. Whatif.com can help you find the spot. Maybe it's a lake house. Maybe it's a cabin with a fire pit. Or a motel in the town with the best vanilla slice in the country. A place where you can sit together in the discomfort with bakery treats and talk it through. Share and try to make sense of what's been happening for you both. Don't push it down. Name it, explain it, feel it, heal it. You're only a what if away from a reset, reconnection, maybe relaxing massage, and perhaps maybe even a laugh at how unhinged you were last Tuesday when someone's loud chewing tipped you over the edge. So jump on whatif.com or the What If app now. It's really easy to find the perfect spot to step away from it all, share what's on your mind, and come back closer. What If? It's Aussie for travel. Okay, we're picking things back up with clinical psychologist Kirsten Bouse, then jumping straight into Leanne Mulheron, because both of these clever cookies have something important to say about what happens when we overfunction for everyone else and ignore what that's doing to us. Kirsten kicks off with some wise words on why maybe we shouldn't be in a rush to get back to our old selves, especially if that old self was bending over backwards for everyone else.
I hear the statement that I think is spoken about a lot in, social media land and commentary, and that is, I don't feel like myself. I can't cope like I used to. I'm overwhelmed. I'm pissed off all the time. The slightest thing sets me off. These are all these are very, very common starting points for therapy. What I also then often hear, which I understand and certainly thought myself when I was going through it, but perhaps is not necessarily the ideal, is I want to get back to the old me. And the reason I kind of stop and think, oh, okay, really? Because the old me is an over-functioning woman, a woman who is doing more than she should, carrying everything, doing everything, flogs herself if she drops one ball. At the moment, she's dropping lots, but, even one's not okay. And I kind of don't want her to have to go back to being that way.
We're not supposed to experience stress on a chronic level. It's supposed to be this acute stress that gets us out of this, life-endangering situation. But when you feel it all the time, it completely disrupts your nervous system. It completely dysregulates you. Creates hypervigilance. You're constantly looking for ways you're not showing up, you're not doing the right thing, you're not being good enough. And it's an endless cycle that you can never get out of. It's like trying to attain perfection. You're never going to get there. You're setting yourself up for this failure. But, this idea that we have to keep all the balls in the air all the time, it's not achievable during peri because, it's a reckoning. Yeah. Your peri kind of comes along and it's this idea that it almost grabs you by the shoulders and shakes you and says, the way you've been doing things isn't working or serving you anymore. Yeah. You need to change some things if you want the next chapter to be different.
I know I, for one, want the next chapter to be different. But bloody hell, it's not easy. We've spent decades being reliable, efficient, holding it all together. And how do you stop doing that when the world expects you to keep saying yes, keep showing up, keep smiling? How do we break the cycle when perfectionism and exhaustion is worn like a badge of honour and saying no still feels like you're letting everyone down? Leanne had some thoughts on that. But before we hear them, I just want to acknowledge that for some people, breaking the cycle, saying no or setting boundaries isn't just hard, it might actually be unsafe. If you're in a relationship with power imbalances, emotional, financial, cultural, or physical, you might need support to make changes safely. You don't have to do that alone. There are services that can help, and we've listed them in the show notes.
So again, praised and raised to put everyone else's attachments before our own authentic needs, right? So we constantly silence ourselves. That activates our nervous system because the body keeps the score. The body knows what you're doing. And our immune system is activated. Our immune system has nothing to attack because there's nothing physically wrong, and it starts attacking itself. And then you have things like autoimmune disease that's coming up, and they're really high in women. They're much higher than they are in men. So the toll is huge. It also breeds resentment, exactly what you were talking about. These things that you've constantly been able to manage now increase resentment because you realise how much you've been carrying and how unfair that load is. So I think the toll is huge. And, I kind of sometimes say to the women that I work with, be more disappointing. I'm only half joking when I say it, but you start saying no to things. Even if you just give yourself a pause, a pause in peripause, just pause before you say yes. Say, I'll think about it and really think about it. Is this serving me? Do I need to do this? Do I need to show up to this as well as all these other things? Don't be the people pleaser anymore. And boundaries are really important as well. So starting to think about where you need more boundaries. When that good woman persona starts to crack, you start to see authenticity. You start to see actually what's important to you. Not the face, not the mask, not the facade, but what is actually important to you. And prioritizing those things. The brain loves homeostasis. So if Peri wasn't this kind of massive reckoning, we'd probably just continue toddling along the way we always have, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of need this shake-up to sort of, it doesn't feel like when you're in it, I'll absolutely attest to that, but we kind of need a little bit of a shake-up, and it needs to be impactful for us to change.
Oh, I've got huge cracks all through my good woman persona, and I think I'm genuinely okay with that now. I just need the rest of society to catch up. I love that Leanne referenced the Peri reckoning, a shake-up that can lead to growth, clarity, and showing up more honestly. But what happens if the people around you aren't ready for that shift, or can't or won't grow with you? Kirsten and Leanne both have thoughts on that. We'll hear from Kirsten first. She's got some sharp insight into how all this change can shake the foundations of our relationships, especially when the people around us aren't changing with us.
We want more support, and if that's not given, then the resentment grows and grows, and it becomes untenable. I think women either shrink somehow, I don't know personally how they do that, but they either really shrink back into this box and stay, and I just think, oh my God, it means you're reliving the rest of your life in this really unhappy place, ultimately. Or they say enough's enough. And some men might respond to enough's enough and say, okay, I've got to do something about it here. And other men just can't or don't want to. And that is a very, very real problem. Yeah. It's hard to see, it's that saying, can't see the wood for the trees. And I think, we've mentioned patriarchy so much, and it's because it's so bloody relevant. And I think this is where a lot of men at these generations, they can't see the privilege that they have, well enough and deeply enough. It's so insidious, and they benefit from it, and they can probably pick a few things maybe if they're a bit reflective, but a lot of men sadly can't. And so it is like talking two different languages then. And we're at a stage where we're just like, fuck it, I can't do it.
It is almost like starting a relationship with a new person. That's how it feels to me right now within my relationship. Is I'm a different person, and he has every right to say that, because I absolutely am.
Yeah, I agree. And it reminds me of something Esther Perel has said, who, relationship expert, amazing woman, and she's still, been with her husband for decades and decades. And she said, I've had multiple marriages. They're different versions of him and I. And I think, isn't that the ideal, that each people has the freedom and space and the respect and support of the other to evolve and change and grow? Because that is what we're supposed to be doing as humans. And awesome, great. But no, not all people are capable of that. And if any of my clients listen to this, they will know this saying, because I've said it so many times. Sometimes you just simply can't ask someone to run a marathon if they actually have no limbs and no way of doing it. And, no access to prosthetics, nothing. Like, it's just, some people just can't. And that's a really hard place to be.
The period of perimenopause is we see a massive spike in relationship breakups. It's the highest across the lifespan. It's also, incidentally, the highest under the age of 85 for suicide. So it's hugely impactful. But we're seeing, a rise in grey divorce. So their marriages or relationships that have been going on for 20 plus years. That's like double in the last 10, 20 years. We're seeing a lot more of the separations initiated by women. I think up to 70% are being initiated by women. I think 85% of women have noticed relationship changes during peri. And that's across the board, whether that's identity. There's two types, I think. There's symptom-led breakups. So women that are experiencing, higher anxiety, might have trouble with libido, communication, things like that. And there's the women that are reasserting their values and looking into their identity and realizing that maybe this partnership doesn't align with that anymore.
What are the psychological patterns between the couples struggling? Like, what are you seeing from both sides?
Yeah. So communication is a big one. Resentment across both sides as well. Resentment often for having to carry the emotional load, and then resentment for you pushing back against those boundaries that haven't been there before. Issues with intimacy. Obviously, there's physical changes. Women are navigating maybe body image issues because of the change of body composition. Libido is a mood. It's not just a drive for sex. It's like, I just don't feel like it because I don't feel any of these things anymore. So sometimes it's creating, intimacy that isn't sex, looking at other ways to be intimate. It's trying to change the communication patterns that have been going on and shift those. A lot of the time for men, I say, you need to educate yourself. You need to know what's going on. You need to know this isn't something that's purposefully happening. It's a neurobiological change. It's probably the biggest biopsychosocial shift that a woman's going to go through her life. So you need to know about this and educate yourself. Don't expect her to educate you. Get out there and be proactive about it. Sit in the distress with her. Don't try and fix it. Don't try and suggest things. Just listen. And definitely don't chew ice anywhere in the vicinity, or you're taking your life in your hands.
Correct. It's correct. It's probably the most important thing you've said this entire interview. You go to your partner, you express how you're feeling, and sometimes women are saying they feel like it's being weaponized against them. How do you, gaslighting, something that thanks to TikTok up there with words like narcissism and, like it's really, Generation Z have really grabbed onto a few words, trauma. But gaslighting is very real and does happen, and it's in subtle ways. And sometimes gaslighting happens from your partner and they don't even realize. It's like they've not walked into the conversation like, right, I'm going to gaslight this bitch. It's just the way society's conditioned men to perhaps respond to women in distress. So I guess I'm looking for you to validate women. How do we bring it up and how do we know if we're being gaslit in return?
Often there's authentic issues there that are being swept under the carpet by saying you're being irrational or you're overreacting or you're too sensitive or something like that. So I think you need to trust your instincts. I think if you think something's wrong, there probably is. Sometimes if you're kind of being triggered and you're in a big emotional moment, I might suggest journaling about it, making a note of it, because obviously our memories are crap as well. So writing about it, you can keep lock notes on your phone, maybe revisiting it later, maybe seeing if there's a pattern, if this is going on a lot. And then obviously you can bring it up and you've got more evidence saying, hey, this isn't just one-off, this is happening a lot. Speak to a trusted friend, someone you can, if you don't trust your own opinion, having a chat about that. But it comes at a really bad time because obviously we're kind of gaslighting ourselves as well because we're going through this huge transition too. So it's doubly insidious, I think, when it's weaponized against us.
So yeah, relationships take a hit and it's tough. But you really do have to stop and consider what's working, what's not, and whether there's actual capability to grow together or run the marathon beside you, as Kirsten put it. It's not just romantic partners or household dynamics that get rocked. Friendships change. Your relationship with work can go off a cliff. We also need to take a hard look at which relationships actually show up with real support and which ones don't. To that end, I asked Leanne what real support actually looks like.
So I think remembering that perimenopause is like having a renovation project done on your house and you're living in it at the same time. Like your brain is changing. Like there's actual neurological, biological changes happening because of the shifts in estrogen, right? So that, as you said, estrogen are in all of the parts of our brain. So that touches on all of our responses and all of the things that affect us. So absolutely educating yourself, stepping in and doing practical support, cleaning the kitchen, doing all these other things that might be helpful. Not waiting to be asked to do something, because that's almost as frustrating as just doing it yourself, right? That's when we just step in and do it ourselves. So offering practical support, getting in there and doing it. Also educating yourself, as I said, but advocating for women, stepping up, being an ally, stepping alongside us and recognizing that this isn't a choice for a lot of women. We're not choosing to behave in this sort of way. There's this whole transition that's happening to us, I've got a survival guide on my website, which they could also check out.
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely free to download on my website.
Links in the bio. Leanne, thank you. As this episode draws to a close, here's what I hope is landing. There is a f***ing good reason you don't feel like yourself anymore. You're actually mid-reno. Your brain is rewiring. You're pruning old patterns, breaking cycles, shedding the people-pleasing. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's also a window of opportunity, a chance to grow into something more grounded, more discerning, more you. And no, that's not putting on a poly-positive spin. Don't believe me? Here's a reminder from Aussie icon, gal about town, one of my favourite humans, Miff Warhurst, and our resident union boss bitch, Will Strack, who can both speak from experience.
Yeah, no, there's happiness at the end of it, I think, because you know a bit more about what you want.
Yes.
And you cut out the extra because you need to protect your peace, because you need the energy to be able to do what you enjoy doing well. People who are difficult or create environments that feel, sort of roller coastery, you just got to get away from it.
Yeah.
You go through this change in the way that you think as you get older anyway, but it's an actual physical manifestation of that which makes you confront the thought of, what is the rest of my life? This is the part of what does the rest of my life now look like? And so your body forces you to have that conversation in ways, in really profound ways.
See, I told you, it's a reckoning. Say it with me. I don't f***ing feel like me for a good reason. There's serious science and solid stories that show once the hormonal chaos settles, clarity kicks in. Reinvention. That fierceness you see in older women who suddenly write books, launch side hustles, go back to uni to get their PhD, dye their hair purple and move to the forest to raise an army of Shetland ponies, it's not random. It's not luck. It's the rewiring.
We've pruned the things that we don't want and we've reinforced the circuitry that we do. I think as well, the wisdom that comes with age is discernment. So the women who go off and do these amazing things as older women, not elderly, older women, get the PhD, they're very discerning with how they spend their time, money and energy, and I think that is one of the gifts of getting older.
Agreed.
I think there's potential for huge growth, and it's a stripping away of these things, an unravelling, a stripping away of these things that no longer serve us.
Don't minimise it. It's big. A biological shift, an emotional reckoning, and for many of us, a total reset. But as we've heard, there's also clarity on the other side, a shedding, a rise, which makes the next question kind of obvious. If perimenopause is real, it is, and perimenopause is hard, it is, and you shouldn't suffer in silence or go it alone, you absolutely should not do that, then how the f*** do we actually get help?
We've got a fragmented system with so many different doors. It's really confusing to know which one to walk through.
If I've taken time out of my day to see my doctor, it's for a valid reason. And I don't want just 6 minutes of their time.
Don't settle either. Find someone else who is a more menopause-informed doctor.
You change your hairdresser twice or 3 times to find a good fit. You might need to change to find a good fit.
Knowledge is power. Women need to understand what is happening with their bodies.
Thanks for listening to Rage Against the Vagine. We're all learning together. And while this isn't medical advice, we hope it helps you ask better questions, feel less alone, and find the support you need. If you're worried about anything you've heard here, please talk to a healthcare professional. Your story matters and you deserve answers. This has been a Down the Hill Studios production, created and voiced by me, Em Rusciano, with my incredible team. Executive produced by Tara Carlon, edited and composed by Ezekiel Fenn. Rage Against the Vagine is made to be shared, replayed and used as a resource, especially by those who need it most. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, rate and leave a review. It helps us reach more people who need to hear these conversations. And if you share it, please credit us and keep the conversation and the productive rage going.
Release the rage with Emsolation.
What a tease!
Woo!
Get even more Em Rusciano.
I've been auditioning gynecologists for the girls.
Auditioning by going to them themselves?
I haven't literally been going in and saying, here you go, here's one that's at ground zero. What can you do for it?
And her best friend since she was 11, Michael Lucas.
I do not think it's the best soundtrack ever.
Frozen 2 is the superior Disney soundtrack.
For me,
Beauty and the Beast.
no.
Oh, I was wrong.
Has to be The Little Mermaid because
I see you.
part of your world unmatched. But then also Poor Unfortunate Souls. Untoppable.
Under the Sea.
The opening number, Fathoms Below.
Oh, the Triton, great Father who loves us and names us well. I mean, you can't beat that.
Another brilliant number.
Les
Poissons.
Les Poissons.
It's not just a podcast.
We didn't even get to talk about how high-cut J-Lo's leotards were at World Pride.
It's a community.
A little bit more feminist.
Equality has been achieved.
Emsolation with Em Rusciano.
Sadly, I could not play a high school student. Apparently.
That's certainly not what I think.
Every Thursday on your favourite podcast app.